6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Through Black and White Eyes. We've got a cracking show lined up tonight with Team Talk's very own Graeme Bailey. Remember, Graeme was on a while ago. Great insight into football in the Northeast. So hopefully we can get some difficult questions that we all have burning answered. And if not, you'll also give us an idea of what's going on. Stadium, transfers, all this sort of stuff. Of course, I have Dan with me. How are we doing, Dan?
Ho, ho, ho. Good evening.
Ho, ho, man. We're past that now, aren't we?
Yeah. We're almost the New Year's. Good evening, Bess. Good to see you, man.
You too, man. Roger says evening. Gary says evening as well. Leslie's in the chat as always, monitoring to make sure things go smoothly. I'm just washing up. All right, okay. I've done all that. Looks like we've called. Yes, we have. Yep. That could be possibly to go out on another loan. Again, I'm sure Graeme might be able to help with that one. Thoughts on links with Sterling and Bob? Sterling's no go. But anyway, let's bring the man in first of all. So, good evening, Graeme.
Good evening, guys. Thanks for having me back.
Good evening, Graeme.
Oh, thank you for coming back. And again, you've got news of your own. You've moved from TBR Football to Teamtalk Football now, which is a big move. Congratulations. So if anyone wants to find where Graeme is on Twitter, he's got his own personal account and he's also working with Teamtalk as well. So that sounds very exciting. Where should we start? Should we start with the Eddie Howe stuff or not? I think we should, shouldn't we? Someone's been asking some good questions, to be fair. And these aren't my questions. I'm not going to take any credit for them. Peter asked this one. How often do PIF attend NUFC board meetings in person, and when was the last one, if you know? It's a good question.
You know, the PIF are represented, obviously, on every single one. I imagine he's thinking, does he attend? Or clearly, he doesn't attend every single one.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's that's why David Hopkins is in.
Hopkinson. Yep.
Hopkinson is in there with Ross Wilson, and they've got a commercial guy in there as well who came. I can't remember his name. You know, they're not micromanaging this. You know, they have what they say is the very best people in football doing this for them. PIF, you know, have their ideas. You know, PIF are very experienced sports. What I say, business now. You know, they operate sports operators. Yeah. I think was probably the best correct terminology for them, and they know each platform they operate in. Each sport is different, and yeah, they're involved. They take their recommendations from David Hopkins and Ross Wilson about what needs to happen, what should happen, what might happen in the future. All avenues that we'll talk about with Eddie Howe, no doubt.
Yeah, we will. I mean, I'm guessing the reason why that question was asked by Peter is he's trying to gauge whether the project is still at their forefront. Are they still in it as much as they were when they first took over? You know, the excitement, it all seems to have like dropped away a little bit, hasn't it?
It maybe from a Newcastle fan's point of view, which I get feeling bad, maybe, but you know, it was always going to be a long process here, and Eddie Howe's he probably overachieved in the first 2 years, if anything, which obviously set them on the right path. You know, they did spend a lot of money in the summer. The Alexander Isak situation didn't help the club as a whole. No. But, you know, that wasn't really, well, it wasn't of Eddie Howe's making. Was it of the club's making? You know, possibly, as they should have had him tied down the year before, and then their failure to do that. Give Anthony Gordon a new contract and not Isak, possibly played its part in that, I believe. So you could argue that was an issue. But these things happen in the biggest clubs in the world as well. We're seeing it with every club in England, and there's probably only the Real and Barca's who don't have to cope with this sort of player power episodes. But it is what it is. In terms of Newcastle, I think PIF are still on board, very much so. I think the new regulations will help Newcastle and the Newcastle and Aston Villas of this world. To be fair, I think that it will help them with the off-field stuff. But obviously, we have, as alluded to, the stadium, the stadium rebuild thoughts, and the training ground, and everything that goes with it. This whole rebuild of Newcastle is a very long operation. Obviously, the fans want to know what's happening now, and it has been a poor season. To be fair, it has been a poor season in terms of performance. But then again, you could also look at it where these new players who've come in, and even in the last 12 to 18 months, the revolution we've seen in the first team from Livramento and Hall at fullback, Malik Chow in the centre, to obviously we've had to go Voltamada and Visa up front. There's new wide players as well, and obviously I was saying the slow implementation of a new midfield three. Joe Linton has had a bit of injuries, but I've always alluded to the fact that I'm sure we'll talk about Joe Linton later in the show as well. But I think that Newcastle have to move on to the next level, and so they have to maybe replace some of these players that Newcastle fans are very fond of, and replace them with better players. But these new players who come in like Thiaw, Voltamada have been staggeringly good, and it's just not quite clicking for Newcastle. But there are lots of reasons to be positive as well. Obviously it hasn't quite gone to plan, but the Champions League's gone relatively okay. I don't think they could have gone too much better. So it's a difficult one. Newcastle, where they want to be, this Premier League is very, very close after the top two, and I think the top two are in a class of their own. I've got to be honest. I think after that, Newcastle could finish anywhere from 3rd to 12th, and I still think they could.
I think Villa are maybe gone a bit too far out of our reach now. But I think
possibly,
right,
but in terms of the team, I don't think they're any better than Newcastle.
No,
massively.
I agree.
But then again, as you said, there's another 8 or 9 teams who are thinking the same thing as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You look at Nottingham Forest, who would argue they've got one of the best best squad, best 1 to 11s in the Premier League, so they'll be coming up strong as well. So, it's not ideal for Newcastle, not quite where they want to be. I think it's more the performances that are an issue rather than the actual team itself.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing, Dan.
Go ahead.
Just very quickly, Ian, if he was on the show right now, after hearing what you just said there, Graeme, Dan, he would be literally reaching for the box of tissues, won't he? Because he's been banging on for like a year about getting better ball playing midfielders in there, and also selling on the older players, not just the older players, like the fan favourites who are potentially not to the level we need them at, and then bringing in the next level.
And that's a massive thing with recruitment. For me, I've always said, I always bang the drum. Recruitment is the most important thing in football, and it's getting it right. And that's not just buying; it's selling as well. So, selling players at the right time. Look at Liverpool; what they're going through with more salary at the minute. Look what Tottenham did with Son, where Tottenham probably got it right with Son. They didn't give him a big new contract and moved him on. And so Newcastle,
Harry Kane for that matter as well.
Harry Kane.
They knew when it was time.
Yeah, so Newcastle could obviously we'll touch on Joe Linton in a minute, because I've been doing a few stories on Joe Linton in the past few months. There is interest in him in Saudi. Is the time now right to move him on when you can sell him at a good level, or do you keep him around I think there's an argument you keep him around as a Premier League squad player, because he's a very good Premier League player, but that he does have a ceiling.
I agree with that.
That's just something that Ross Wilson and who is a talk about recruitment, and getting Ross Wilson, I think, is a staggeringly good appointment by PIF and those around. I've got a lot of time for Ross. I think he's a top class operator, and he will get it right. But it's not going to be overnight. But Newcastle need to do bits. Obviously, we'll talk about the January window pretty soon. But they're not in a bad place. It's just these performances, and are they adapting to the style? Obviously, Isaac going. Let's not forget they've been playing with at best he's a number 10. They've been playing with number 10 operating as number 9, and they've been covering for that pretty well. But there's been some other jaw-droppingly bad performances away from home, especially. But I'm sure Eddie Howe had a lot of thinking to do. Him and Jason Tyndall over Christmas, looking to see what the real issues were, because they're not. I think they will say they're not a million miles away, but these 3 to 5% can have a real issues on any Premier League performance. Because there's not much. There's such a close between the bottom 4. If you take the bottom 4 and top 2 away, there's not much between the rest of them. This season particularly, there's not much between the rest of them.
Yeah, Dan.
No, I think part of the question that was asked earlier was the involvement of PIF. We saw last summer with the absence of both the director of football and a CEO. That there was quite a bit of confusion. The recruiting team, as we've talked about, the recruitment is 90% of football. You're looking to get players in, get players out, that kind of thing. The question about PIF's involvement, I wonder, with the confusion that we had over the summer, with the drawn-out ESAC situation, with, going back to 2 summers ago, losing Elliot Anderson and Yakuba Minta, without ever really seeing Minta play due to PSR reasons. Now that we've got the ESAC situation out of our, in the rearview mirror now and everything, PIF's involvement, I guess maybe part of the question was, is there a transfer kitty that Wilson and Hopkinson now control without having to go back to the chairman or go back to PIF and get agreement on or permission on before they can use it? Do we have a certain level of autonomy that would allow us to go, hey, here's a player that we think we need, without having to, go hat in hand asking, hey, can we go spend this $100 million?
Yeah, I think obviously when the new rules come in, I think it'll be more applicable. In the current system, I don't believe that Hopkinson and Wilson have to ring PIF up saying, look, we're about to spend 20-30 million on player X or player Y, or we're about to sell. Obviously, Jolinton might be a slightly different angle, given it might be PIF who take him to Saudi. So that might be a different situation. But say if you were selling a Fabian Schär to another Premier League club or whatever, they're not.
Right.
Ross Wilson's not speaking to PIF to get their permission to do it. He's got carte blanche to run that footballing department, and Ross Wilson is running that football department. Or Hopkinson's there as the CEO. Hopkinson won't be making any footballing decisions. Every footballing decision will be made by Ross Wilson. That's what he's there to do. He's not. It's not. It's not a communist state. It's a bit of a dictatorship, I should say. Ross Wilson's there. He's the footballing chief at Newcastle now, and he'll be. If there's a big decision to be made, it'll be Ross Wilson making it.
Just because we have some of our viewers who rewatched the Amazon, documentary, for lack of a better word, over the holidays and everything, and you saw with the Gordon transfer, and I'm sure part of it was trying to make good TV, but at the same time, everybody was involved. Ashworth was involved, Darren Eales was involved, Stavely and Gadusi, we're all involved. I'm happy to that we now have a Ross Wilson in that figurehead position where he can say, look, all the decisions are run through me, and he has the autonomy to get on with the
it's a very different club now to what was run then. It's a very different club. Obviously, Amanda Stavely was out at the time. She was very close to the club, but obviously wanted to be a bit more hands-on. That's not the situation as it is now.
I love that. Going back to the Isaac saga, it was a good question. It's not really about Isaac. It's more about when he left. Do we feel the club's now lost a bit of the togetherness? Obviously, there's a lot of rumours of rifts between players who supported Isaac publicly and Eddie Howe, or the club aren't happy with that. So Botman, Gordon, Willick, Kraft, for example, those 4 players were very vocal about his move to Liverpool and very publicly about it. Do you hear anything about a rift, or do you think that's just a load of rubbish?
No, there's not. Newcastle. It's not as we alluded to. It's not a communist state. As long as the players don't go overboard, they're entitled to have their opinions and stuff. And I don't think it went over the top. I think the players were allowed to comment on the situation. Obviously, they know a bit more on certain things. But I think in Newcastle and Eddie Howe especially managed it very well. It was a tough time for the club, and they could only do what they could. There's no extended rifts or anything like that. No, that's a nonsense. For Newcastle to hold something against Sven Botman, for instance, because of how he felt about, no, that's a nonsense from what I believe. There's much bigger fish to fry for Newcastle than alluding to a previous relationship with a previous player.
Yeah, I thought that would be the case, but it just seems from the outside looking in, something doesn't seem to be right. You know what I mean?
Something's not right because you're in the bottom half of the table, and Newcastle United don't want to be there. So you'd be worried if we're all out partying down the quayside every night and thinking everything's great. You'd be even more worried at that point, wouldn't you? Yeah,
doing a Jack Grealish. This is a good one, and I don't know how much you would know about the medical side of things, but does the medical staff come under question, and does it need overhaul? For instance, Fabian Schär got concussed. We could all see it in the game. They allowed him back on the pitch. Why was he allowed back on? Are they good enough to do their job? We've got Sven Botman, who played on through a cruciate knee ligament injury, and he's got worse. He's now got back problems and all this sort of stuff. Wissa ends up with a knee injury. Well, that's international duty for me, though. But they weren't very open about how long that was going to take for him to come back. Do we have confidence, basically, in the medical staff at Newcastle United? Because it looks a little bit amateurish at the moment when you watch it live.
Well, the concussion stuff's completely to Premier League concussion protocols. I did a previous pod with Mark Clattenburg, and whether you agree, I don't really agree with the Premier League's concussion protocols. It has to be said. I think the Premier League's concussion protocols as a whole need to be looked at. But again, I could argue that if you look at the NFL, their protocols, everything in terms of sporting protocols when it comes to concussion is way behind rugby union. But I think the Premier League, when a player should be assessed, but it's all about cost and stuff and getting players on and off, and so I think the concussion stuff is completely I understand that there is a third party doctor who's in the ear of the officials at every Premier League game, so I don't really think that's a Newcastle situation. In terms of Botman and his injury, again, it's just we don't know what the players saying. We don't know the players' assessment of the situation is. It's every club. We see it all the time. From every club has these issues with injuries. Look at Arsenal have been going through it for a lot of years. They are more.
So you've got a bad one this year as well, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. Rodri's still not back to full fitness yet. It's the medical thing is it's one of those areas of expertise where you have to trust the people in place and trust in the process. That will be something that Ross Wilson will be assessing. If he thinks it needs an overhaul, he'll do it.
Because Bonds came in, didn't he, Dan? And we thought Bonds was going to be the best of the best. He's just nodding. You're on mute. Dan, you're on mute. You muted yourself, mate.
Cheers, thank you. No, for whatever reason, Bunce came in. We were very excited about having a fitness guru, so to speak, specifically a performance-based one. And it for all intents and purposes, it looked like our high press, our high intensity kind of system of play that we had for the first 2 seasons is time to take it a back seat to prevention and the quick rehabilitation to the detriment of the style of play. So I wonder. We were all very excited when Bunce came in, but I wonder how much of his influence is now putting a limit on what our capabilities could be. over.
Yeah, the intensity is our identity seems to have disappeared a little bit, Graham. I don't know if you agree with that as well, if it comes to that, because we've got a lot of injuries when we play that way.
Not really. Yeah, but that happens. Players. You don't get as many injuries when someone's top of the league. It's not a coincidence, is it? Players are more likely to play on and get through things, and there's so many different factors to this that I think I think I'll be honest, far too much has been read into that, and I think if Newcastle fans looked at you, there's a lot more injuries that are rife to other clubs. And there's, I think it's one of those swings and roundabouts. I think everyone gets injuries, and I think especially the big 8 to 10 Premier League clubs now, they've all got world-class medical staff and facilities, really.
Very interesting. So I think we just allude to that Champions League, the first one where we were literally down to Miley, Bruno, and Tonali, wasn't it? Miley, Bruno, and Joe Linton. We just seem to have lots of injuries. But again, that's the fixture list to pile up, like you said. Just bad luck as well sometimes. Transfers. So we'll talk about transfers out. You mentioned Joe Linton. There's a very interesting one at the moment, though, where we have two goalkeepers where everyone, if they could put them together, we would have a great goalkeeper in Pope and Ramsdale if you could put both their attributes together. But we have a goalkeeper out on loan who's making big noises in Spain, and potentially he could be making it permanent. Have you heard anything on that?
Who's that? Which? Sorry? The Greek
goalkeeper,
yeah, he's not Premier League standard, so by all means bring him back, but he's not Premier League standard, so he's nowhere near. He's so far off Nick Pope and Aaron Ramsdale, it's unreal. He's a million miles away from them too. Newcastle have got one of the best current 1-2 hits goalkeeper. Nick Pope's had a brilliant start of the season. Ramsdale, I think, is a superb goalkeeper. No, the Greek boy is miles off it, and I'd be amazed if you saw him at any time soon. I'd be I'd be surprised, and he's that goalkeeper department is not a massive issue for Newcastle if it's Pope or Ramsdale. Both, I think Ramsdale's done pretty well when he's come in. Then Nick Pope has had a wonderful start of the season. Then in England recall. I don't see why anyone would look beyond those two.
Wow, there you go. So just a lot of our fans see it differently when it comes to the goalkeeper situation.
I think there's a lot of issues with Newcastle. I don't think the goalkeeper department's one of them. I really don't. I really don't. If it was that easy, no way. I just don't see that, and I don't believe the Newcastle coaching staff see it that way either.
That's very true. I mean, Eddie Howe has made it quite clear that Nick Pope was his number one until obviously his injury.
You've got two England nationals, current England nationals, battling away. I don't see any. I said there are issues in this Newcastle squad. The goalkeeping department is not one of them.
Yeah, there we go, guys. There's an interesting one for you. Joe Linton, then, 29 now. When he's not playing and when he's missing from our team, we do seem to lack a bit of power, I guess, in midfield, that tenacity side of things. I mean, you've got Bruno and Tonali, who are lovely footballers. You've got Ramsey, who can carry the ball well, but there's no one really a ball winner. And that's what Joe Linton sort of was, a box-to-box machine. Like I said, there's pros and cons. How much would we get for him is the first start, because when we're dealing with Saudi, we've got to bring in fair play, haven't we? Like the price has to be fair market value.
Obviously, what people get wrong with Saudi is Saudi don't pay astronomical transfer fees for players. They pay astronomical wages. So when you look, everyone thinks, we'll get 100 million from Saudi for whichever player Joe Linton. You're not going to get that.
You're not going to get that.
If you look back to the Saudi spending, they don't actually spend that much money on players in terms of transfer fees. I think Joe Linton
when the first came about. I thought
if you look last 2 years, don't do it.
Yeah.
Joe Linton, obviously, he's someone who I'd imagine you get about 30 to 40 million at best for him. He's 29 now. He's the thing is, what Newcastle fans think about Joe Linton. Unfortunately, it's tough. I know he's a bit of a local legend, but he's a local legend. He's not.
Yeah.
Whereas if you went Tyneside and said, name me your top 10, top 20 midfielders in the Premier League, Joe Linton would be in every list. If you went outside the Tyneside, he wouldn't make a single one.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
He is a good Premier League player. I have this argument with a lot of Newcastle fans, and I'm not doing him down. I know what a world class Brazilian midfielder looks like being from Middlesbrough, and Joe Linton is not one of them. He's a good Premier League midfielder, but I think he's just a good Premier League midfielder. Newcastle want to be challenging for the title. I think he'd be a good squad player for you, but. When someone like Ramsey comes in, Jacob Ramsey the ceiling of him is potentially top class. He really is a brilliant footballer. And I think Bruno brings that to your midfield. I do with Tonali, but also it gives you the option of playing a 2. Will we see Voltemada playing behind Visa? I think we will at some point.
We would love to.
I think let's not forget Voltemada is a number 10.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've been saying for a lot of years, Newcastle have been missing the number 10 from the time when they tried to sign James Maddison. And I think Joe Linton, Joe Linton offers you. He doesn't offer assists. He doesn't particularly offer goals. He offers hard work and box to box. Does that qualify you to start for a top 5 Premier League team? Not for me personally. I think he's a good player, not a great player. And I think for Newcastle to move to the next level, you need to replace players like that. He's just, which other top 5 teams would Joe Linton get into? He'd be looking at getting the bench for some of them.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
That's my point. And you need to upgrade that department. Like you'll need to upgrade Dan Burn at some point.
Yeah.
These are areas that Newcastle know it as well. But do you strike while they're in top? I don't.
It's hard, isn't it? Because of PSR, isn't it? That's the thing. I don't think
Eddie would let him out in January because Eddie doesn't want to weaken the squad in any way. I think it's something more likely for the summer. But that, in the same regard, if they did get the money in and that allowed Ross Wilson to bring 1 or 2 players in other areas, I think they would. I think they would look at it and consider it. But that is one area. That midfield with Tonali and Bruno, obviously they'll hope that them two aren't going anywhere anytime soon. But it does give Eddie Howe the chance to play around. Do you bring a number 10 in? Do you bring someone in to keep the 4-3-3? It's an interesting aspect, and I think we will see changes there.
Yeah, see, I thought Ramsey would also be potentially in that 10 role as well. Because
he's more than capable of playing there. He's a top-class operator. But yeah, exactly, he can play that. Ramsey can do that job for sure. Yeah,
but just not seeing that potential yet on the pitch as much as we thought we were going to see it.
But you can't. But I'd say to Newcastle fan, you can't have everything. It's like Voltemada's come and hit the ground running. Thiago's come and hit the ground running. It's like you'd be itching that every single player you bring in has to hit the ground running. There's so many players who've come in this summer who haven't hit the ground running. Look at Fabian Wirtz, one of the greatest signings in Premier League history, hasn't hit the ground running.
Yeah, no,
it's one of those things, isn't it?
I absolutely agree with you, and I think we've been spoilt with our transfer windows. Where in the past, you could probably argue every player worked out, and we were hitting the 100% record in our transfers, and suddenly it takes a bit of a dip, and everyone's like, "Hold on a minute, this shouldn't happen. This should be ready to go," and that's not how life works, is it?
Exactly.
So, yeah. Any other outgoings do you think could be possible? Like Kieran Trippier, another one that's been mentioned. Kraft, we're all injured at the moment. No, that's the problem.
In terms of January, I don't think we'll see an awful lot. Eddie really doesn't want to weaken the squad. Obviously, we've still got Champions League campaign to think about, League Cup as well, FA Cup. There's a lot of, and obviously the league will take primary focus in the coming months as well. I don't see too many outs. You could argue that Longstaff wasn't really replaced in the squad. Is there more fullbacks needed? Arguably, because Lewis Miley obviously been doing a good job at right back, but that's not the ideal scenario. I think that just highlights that the lack of depth at times in the Newcastle squad, and and I think it also does highlight the lack of young players coming through at times, because we're not seeing many.
No.
Right.
And all these young, all these 15, 16, 17-year-olds might be coming in from abroad. That's not always a good sign. That they might be plugging gaps in the academy, and I would dare say, I think of the big three North East clubs, I think Newcastle are in bronze medal position, and not even close to the other two. They're really not. But that's something the club are looking at to address. But that's a 10-year scenario before we start seeing the real the shoots of progress in that regard. But it's a situation they are looking at. I think they might look at the loan market as well. I don't think Trippier will go. Livramento is something that they're going to be looking at in terms of a new contract. I think they'll try and do that in January, but how positive that is at the moment. Man City are pushing really hard for him. They love him, and they're not the only ones. A lot of clubs like him. So Livramento is going to be something we'll talk about in 2026 quite a lot. I think they will look at another centre half, in the Botman situation as well with his new contract that needs doing. I think that will get done. From what I'm hearing, a few weeks ago, and it was progressing. So they're pretty happy with the 1-11. They need to work on the squad, but obviously PSR worries. We're not expecting to see a whole lot out, really. Let's see what happens in the loan market, though. There's a Conor Gallagher incident. I've done a story today on Conor Gallagher. Conor Gallagher will be available come January. Could he offer that alternative to the midfield three? He's a top class operator. Man United like him, Tottenham too. Could be available on loan. Interesting prospect there. He's someone who can carry the ball beautifully into midfield. He can break into the box. He's a high caliber operator. So I wouldn't necessarily rule Newcastle out with that equation.
See, I didn't like him at Chelsea, but when he moved to Atletico Madrid, he really went up another gear. I don't know if he got more freedom because he was away from that Chelsea London hub sort of situation, but he certainly improved his standards, I think, when he moved away from Chelsea. You mentioned Tino. I have heard, and obviously we have Martin, the Man City fan. He said that Tino is being pushed at City. We've also heard that his contract, he wants a release clause in it. Can you shed any light on that?
The Liverment talks haven't obviously Newcastle ideally he would have signed his new deal by now. So we'll have to see how these progress. Newcastle are not even contemplating him going at the moment. It depends how much that can carry on. I think he's 29 or something. Livramento, isn't he tied to or something long term? 28 or something. Anyway, it's not.
I think so.
Yeah, it's not. He's not like 20.
Right.
Yeah. So I think there's a good chance he'll sign. Obviously, he'll need to get Bruno type money, which is what he'll be offered. What he is being offered is my understanding. So I think they're hopeful that they can get him tied down. It won't be January, but post-January, ahead of the World Cup. But he's got an awful lot of interest, and so he should. He's playing phenomenally well. He did in the summer. He's carried on that with England as well. He's one of the first names on the team sheet for Thomas Tuchel at the minute, either side. So, I think in terms of contracts, Botman and Livramento are the two who I think we'll see Newcastle concentrating on early in the new year.
I don't want to lose Tino, but if we were offered 80 million for him, it would be hard to turn that down because that would be a world record fee for a right back.
I don't think anyone's offering 80, and I don't think you would need to offer that much to persuade you. So
60 maybe.
Maybe.
I wouldn't want to lose him, to be fair. He's just too instrumental. You mentioned about our youth system. Obviously, our training facilities is shocking compared to Sunderland and Middlesbrough's. The players we have on our books, like I've been saying for God knows how long, we won't see the fruits of those labours for 5-10 years because we're rebuilding. We've had 14 years of absolute nothing to then trying to rebuild everything. And Keys Smith is another player who I think we're going to miss out on. Would you agree on that? 19-year-old from AZ Akbar?
I wouldn't say you're going to miss out on him. I've done quite a lot on him in the last few months. He's an interesting player. He's obviously at AZ, so he's a player Newcastle like. They have done it for a while. He's not an instant impact player. He's going to come in and need time to adapt.
100%.
The Dutch league is a very strange league, as we've seen for a lot of years.
Yeah.
They can be very hit and miss, these Dutch players, when they're coming in. They're both from the Dutch league to the Premier League.
Yeah, look at the De Jongs. Yep.
We've all seen that in the northeast. Players coming in from there. He's an interesting player, and I wouldn't say Newcastle out the equation at all. No, I think that Keith Smith will end up in England, and I think Newcastle are certainly up there for potential landing spots. Not sure we'll move in January, if I'm being honest. But I think Newcastle is certainly in the mix for him. I'm not sure. I wouldn't rule him out the equation at all.
See, one of the things I would be saying as a Newcastle fan, I was Newcastle go and get him in January, but loan him straight back to the club. Other teams have done it in the past. Try and get a head start on your.
It's a possibility. It's not impossible, but yeah, as I say, it's not impossible.
There's one outgoing I forgot about. Asula. What is going on there?
Yeah, I think that is possible. Frankfurt are looking at him. I know they're looking at Calimiendo from Forest as well. Yeah, I think there's a. But again, although it's a possibility, Eddie, if Asula's not covering that bench spot, who then takes that place on the bench? Who's stepping up from? So Eddie's got that point of view where Asula, if you're not going to be getting 40-50 million for him. So what's he going to add to your budget? He comes on, does a job at times. I think could he start an FA Cup tie? Depending on what draw you get, do you know what I mean? Does he come off the bench? I think he fills a role. I don't think it's. I think the player would quite like more first team football. So I think that's where this comes from. But obviously Frankfurt are not sure. Hence why they're looking at Calimiendo as an alternative as well now.
Yeah. The thing with Asula, and Dan, you sort of agree with as well, is he a striker or is he a right winger?
Right. Yeah. What is his best position? Because we haven't been able to tell in the limited amount of time that we've seen him. I mean, he's scored a couple of good goals. I mean, there was the one against Bromley, and then the one in the dying minutes in the Prem. We're looking forward to seeing that level. And of course, obviously, from his social media hijinks, he's obviously well liked within the squad, liked within his age group and in his sphere of influence. I think he was instrumental in getting the Langa to come to the club. He's obviously formed a pretty good comedic partnership with Vissa. I wonder, if he truly wants out, or if this is a thing where the club has said, we don't. You're not a good fit for us, and therefore, we're going to move you on.
I know they haven't said that. They do like him as a player, but how long do you give these players to become first teamers? And if they can, if they're looking at a profit on him as well, so that comes in. Obviously, financials come into it as well, and
sure.
He is a good player. Just how good is he?
Right.
And he is filling a role in the squad. But obviously, Eddie in the hierarchy are going to have to discuss that, and when Visa comes back. But you don't have very many options in the final third, especially centrally, do you?
Right.
No, absolutely. I mean, again, they're all fighting for one position. That's the other problem as well.
They are to a certain extent, but then if you start playing Voltemada as a 10 and Visa, then you'd be thinking there's even less chance for Asula going. But then if Asula goes, do they allow them to bring someone else in? It's possible, and that's all the options that are being considered now. And Ross Wilson he'll be presenting Eddie with various options. If Asula goes, we can do this. We might have to wait, or do we do this and that? So that's everything being discussed at the club as well.
Sure.
I mean, that was mainly the conversation last night, Dan, wasn't it? Around why Visser and Baltimore haven't been seen together. It's because, if you play them together, you've got nothing on the bench, and then
correct.
No one's getting a rest, and potentially you run down that route of injuries, don't you? Again,
This hasn't been able to play. I think that's the main reason.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah. Graeme, if you were to nail your colours to the mast now, how many players do you think we are trying to sign in this window?
Not many.
Yeah,
I
I
say
don't
in
think
terms
it's going to be a
for
big one.
trying to sign players in the window, or for players to come in the January window. If we can just sort of premise that question a little bit. One or two, I think they do know what's out there in terms of the loan market. I'd say one or two. That could depend on exits as well. You know, if Asula goes, you know, if Kraft goes, if Trippier, you know, there are lots of ifs, buts, and maybes, as with every window. If suddenly you let 2 or 3 out, then you'll bring 2 or 3 in for sure.
Yeah,
I don't think you'll probably lose, like in terms of first teamers, not talking about like some of the younger players who might go on loan, but in terms of first teamers, I don't think you'll lose in squad size.
Right. That makes total sense.
Yeah,
Very quickly,
absolutely.
we'll pop this up because obviously Graeme's heavily involved in this because it's one of his charity. It's his charity, Butterwick Hospice, who will be receiving 50% of the proceeds, and of course Azure charity with Gibbo, he will be getting the other 50%. It's £15 per person. It's cheap as chips. I mean, we could have put it up more, but we wanted to get as many people through the door as possible. It's at Newcastle Benfield Football Club. You've just got to email us for a link to buy the tickets, or if you want, you just scan that QR code and it'll take you to the link to buy the tickets. And we just want to have a cracking night talking about football and having a few drinks with people and getting to see as many Newcastle fans as possible. And hopefully Graeme will be able to give us more of an update of what happened through January and about other stuff that's going on at the football club. And then we can listen to Super Mac and Gibbo and have us in stitches, basically, because that's what they're very good at doing. I can't wait for it, mate. It's going to be a cracking night. Right, back to potential signings. There's so many we've been linked with recently, and some of them are absolutely silly. Can we rubbish the Ryan Sterling link?
Raheem
Please
Sterling,
just tell me that's a load of rubbish.
I don't know. Yeah, he will be moving in January. There is quite a few clubs looking at him. I believe he'll be staying in London though. Don't really see why Newcastle would want another winger at this point at this juncture. To be honest, I think he's still a very good player. He really is. And he would challenge at Newcastle. But yeah, I think with Elanga, Murphy, Ramsey, Gordon, Barnes, don't really see the need at Newcastle. It's not one I've heard for Newcastle, to be honest.
Yeah, he moved to Arsenal and it didn't really make an impact there either, did he? So if we're talking about going to the next level, loaning someone like Ryan Sterling doesn't reach the next level for me when it comes to what we've already got as well. There is one player who moved recently who is now back on everyone's lips, El Khanous. He was at Leicester. He's obviously moved on. He's still only 21. I think he's a fabulous footballer who could potentially be a number 10. Any rumours
he is.
in that?
Well, he's at Stuttgart, wasn't he?
Yeah.
There are people trying to move him back.
Right.
From what I understand. Again, it's not one I've heard for Newcastle massively, but he is a talented player. I was just looking up on El Khanous, but he can't actually join. He can't move in January anyway, can he? Looking at my information, he's already played for Leicester.
Depends when Leicester got him. Or did he play for Leicester?
He's played for Leicester and Stuttgart, so he won't be joining Newcastle in January. I think he's more one for something. Yeah, he can't play. He couldn't come and play, so people are not doing the research, doing stories on that.
Well, the other one is Ruben Neves, obviously out in Saudi. We've been linked with him heavily because of obviously the links between our owners and the football club. Again, 28 now. Would he be someone Newcastle would actually look at? Cracking player.
I think there's a good chance. He's a wonderful talent. I haven't heard him much for Newcastle. I've done a lot of stories on him. I think he's more inclined to like a Manchester United or something, but he's a free in the summer. Whether Al Hilal let him out, I think Neves. What people need to remember is when I speak to my Saudi contacts, they do emphasise Ronaldo aside, There's no one had a bigger impact in the Saudi Pro League than Ruben Neves. He's been absolutely fantastic for Al Hilal. He's an amazing professional. He's done it in the Premier League before for a lot of years. He's a tremendous footballer. I don't see him fitting in Newcastle purely because of what you got with Tonali. I think he's too similar to Tonali and Bruno. I think you would need someone different. I think someone like Gallagher's different to him. I don't think Ruben Neves would give you that legs that, you know, I guess you could put him next to Tonali and move Bruno up the pitch, but I don't see that personally. So I don't think Ruben Neves actively will be on Newcastle's radar. But I said does he come up as a 6-month loan? If he does, you never know. There might be a few opportunistic loans out there for Newcastle. Like, look at what Villa did last January. They improved massively with a couple of opportunistic January deals. I wouldn't rule Newcastle out that market.
The thing I worry about with Neves, and I don't know if this is, I'm sure it's right, but they can't move inside the first 2 years of their contracts because they end up paying tax.
No, he's been there over. That's not a thing for Neves. He's been there over 2 years anyway.
Has he been over there 2 years now? Well, that's fair enough then.
Nearly 3 years. Nearly 3 years, I think.
Right, but then he doesn't fit into that category.
No, that's not a problem for them.
Dan, any players you would, if you heard or you want to know about?
Well, the one that keeps cropping up, of course, is the young keeper that moved for cheap and then. Yes, that one.
Is Trafford on the radar? I guess that's the question.
I'm told sources have at Newcastle. No, he's not. Newcastle are not in for a goalkeeper in January.
Yep.
Why would they be?
Well,
there you go.
Yeah, fan pressure is the only thing I can think of. But there we go.
And you want to go for James Trafford, who looked decidedly. At best, ordinary when he started for City. I saw him a lot for Burnley. Aaron Ramsdale is a better goalkeeper than James Trafford. I'm telling you now. Aaron Ramsdale is a better goalkeeper than James Trafford. I think it's the fans get like the sound of it. I don't think if you're actually looking at the player. Yeah, he's not. He's. I said he's not as good as Aaron Ramsdale for me at the moment. I think he's a bit way off. He's young. He's got ambition, but Man City aren't letting him go in January either. James Trafford is not. James, why would City let him go in January?
They've still got two other good, decent goalkeepers, haven't they? So it depends on who they want to get rid of. They've got 4 on the books, haven't they? So. I mean, why would they want to let him go? It's up to James Trafford to fight for his place, isn't it? Really, at the end of the day.
Man City ain't going to do anyone any favours. Man City not letting James Trafford go in January anyway. And if he was, Newcastle wouldn't be one of the teams in. If Man City made James Trafford available for transfer tomorrow, Newcastle would not be one of the clubs in for him.
Right, that's fair.
There you go.
Are we going to sign Ramsdale? Because if you let Ramsdale go and then you let Vladimir go, then we've only got one goalkeeper in the summer.
It's possible. Obviously, Nick Pope's done really well. I think let's see with Aaron Ramsdale. I think if Aaron Ramsdale finishes the season as number 1, I think there's a fair chance he might. If he finishes the season at number 1, I think there's a good chance Newcastle make it permanent.
Ooh, there you go. I don't know how good this information is, but Thiago from Brentford. He's only just moved there. He's obviously done very well at his debut season so far. Do you see Newcastle making a move for him in January or the summer?
He's not moving in January. He's not moving in January. No, the Brentford class him as world class, and I don't disagree with them. To get Thiago out of Brentford, it will cost you in excess of 70 million, is my prediction. And Newcastle will not be in. I don't think Newcastle will be able to spend 70 million on a striker in the summer. There's not many teams who will. So no, I don't believe he will be in for Thiago. It's not to say that they don't admire him, but there's not many teams in Europe at the moment who don't admire him. He is one of the form strikers in Europe. But with players like that, you have to get him before that. You have to get him when Brentford did. Now. I say, and people scoff at that. They say, "Oh, he's world class," but Brentford think he's better than Ivan Toney when he was there. He's younger. I imagine he's pushing very hard for the Brazilian squad. If he ends the season as, he probably won't end as top scorer given Erling Haaland. But if he finishes the season on over 20 goals, then he probably is worth 70, 75 million, if
Well,
not more.
easily.
Why wouldn't he be? Why wouldn't he be worth more than that?
I absolutely agree. And again, you are right. It's getting the scouting system, which we haven't had properly for a while, getting in there before everybody else does, finding those gems.
You have to, but then the fans have to back this as well. It's all very well.
Yeah.
I know it's all very well. All of us fans and you fans, Newcastle fans alike. When if you were today getting linked to maybe Promise David from Union in Belgium, you're saying, "Oh, we're going to sign him." I bet half fans would say, "Well, why we're not spending extra money on Thiago from Brentford?" Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't sign the player who's potentially the new Thiago, and then trying to sign. There's a big difference. What would Promise David cost? 30 million from Union. Very good player. Is he the next Jonathan David or the next Thiago? Possibly. But these are the fans have to allow these.
Isn't there?
Well, fans have to allow. Obviously, when Brentford is signing a player from Genk for 30 million, that's a big deal for them. If Newcastle are signing a player for 30 million from Genk, are Newcastle fans dance up and down?
No, I get what you're saying.
Down the quayside celebrating.
Yeah.
They're probably not. They're saying, why aren't we paying 80 million for Thiago?
Yeah, but again, that we can't because of the PSR.
Exactly, it's a tough situation for these clubs and what they're doing. If the fans have to be on board with what the club are doing and they have to trust what they're doing.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. Alexander Soloff, he's been mentioned a few times. Again, wrong sort of age bracket, but could be a short-term gem potentially.
Not for me. I don't see how that. He's going to be on decent money at Atletico Madrid.
Yeah,
I don't believe that. I don't believe he's one that Atletico will let go. Although Griezmann's probably leaving, so I don't see them. And Julian Alvarez has been linked with a move away as well. So I saw that has been linked with a few teams, but depends. Newcastle, I wouldn't rule out another striker for Newcastle in January. I think they do need another one in there. But Atletico Madrid are going to let Soloff out on loan. To be honest,
that's true.
I don't say he's not a bad player. I don't mind him, but again. If you do bring another one in, do you want it to be better than Voltemada and Visa? You probably do, but then that's very hard to do in January.
Yeah, absolutely. Rayan in Brazil, his name's been mentioned a few times around a few things. Quite a young lad.
Yeah, he won't be coming. He won't want for January. If he does, he doesn't come in and make an impact. So that's what more long-term one at this point. Yeah, but there is interest in a few players in Brazil.
Yeah, well, we've got our new scouts over there around that kind of area, haven't we? Apparently.
Well, I say you Newcastle have always had decent scouts in that area of the world. It's not as if they weren't down there before.
It makes you wonder why we aren't getting them in. I don't know. It's an interesting one.
But getting them in and to do, you've signed quite a lot of young players from around the world, more than some clubs, and they haven't worked out. So
that's true.
There needs to be. It can't be an obsession with the Brazilian market, but that Brazilian market's a very hard market to operate in. Given Blueco and Citigroup are so dominant in that market, it's very difficult to operate in. There's not many bargains left, and there's not many bargains left down there now. Obviously, they are cheaper, but obviously you've got to sign these players either at a really young age, but with a promise of coming in when they're 18.
Yeah,
it's a difficult place to operate, but I said you sign players from Australia, from Serbia, from all sorts of wood, so you can't have players literally from everywhere in the world. Although Newcastle are doing a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, we do try our best. Any maybe rumours of potentially getting someone like Mamouche or Oscar Bob from Man City? They seem to be not getting the game time, especially if Semenyo goes to City.
Well, Semenyo will be going to City, understanding. Yeah. It's interesting that out of the top 6 or 7, Newcastle are probably one of the only ones who weren't in for Semenyo, which is surprising given Eddie's Bournemouth relationships. But Mamouche is going to. I don't think Mamouche will be available. If Mamouche was available, that just creates issues for City further down the line. Oscar Bob, a good player, very good player, but where's he going to play at Newcastle? Does he improve what you've already got? He's not
Right.
better than Jacob Ramsey.
No, I agree.
So
And
I think when I say deals to January, it's like when Villa brought Asensio and Rashford in. They're not easy to do, these deals, but if it's a really good loan to be had, and I'm not talking about Xerxes or Mainoo for Man United, because again, you'd argue neither of those would get in Newcastle's team anyway. You need to look at these players who are not playing for these huge clubs, and like for top of my head, once if Ramos was available from PSG, which I don't think he will be, by the way, guys. I don't think he will. But in theory, if someone like that was available, then you look at that and do maybe short term. When I say short term loans for Newcastle, I mean ones who are going to come in and play, like Asensio and Rashford did for Villa.
And make a huge difference as well.
Well, yeah. Otherwise, what's the point? It gives the people a lift.
Yeah.
You need players who will give you a lift if you're going to do it that way.
Conor Gallagher
Conor Gallagher.
Covered that. Yeah, we've covered him. There was a question that said that if you would, there it is. If we're going to sign 3 players, who would they likely be? Who would you nail your mass to?
I wouldn't nail my mass to 23. If no one goes, then I think Conor Gallagher will come to England. Whether he goes to Newcastle or not, I wouldn't nail that to the mass. Especially if Manchester United are in the mix, just because. It's an interesting project there. I think Newcastle will be looking for another forward, depending on what happens with Visa and where they play Voltamada. It wouldn't surprise me if another fullback comes in. It depends on Trippier and Kraft's injury. What happens there? But again, I think if a fullback, I'm not. There's going to be ones available. Out there who we don't know about. Plenty of loan options there. I'm not sure we see a big name signing at Newcastle unless it's if it's a Joe Linton replacement, for instance. But and I don't think we'll see a whole raft of Premier League signings. Semenyo aside, I think Tottenham will do a bit. I don't think it'll be the busiest January in history. I really don't, guys.
We've got a couple of Sunderland fans who watch our channel because we go on theirs as well. Are Sunderland going to do any business just for them guys in the chat?
Well, I did do a Sunderland story. Sunderland's list of targets is interesting. I did a story today about Beudi and Kamara from Monaco for Sunderland, and not necessarily for January, but just in terms of what they're looking forward to. Their wanted list and radar is increasingly looking at some top quality players, and the Sunderland project is very interesting for them. I think they'll look at a striker, and I wouldn't be surprised if they look at another midfielder, because I think Dan Neil will depart Sunderland this January.
Right.
I think he'll head to the top of the Championship. Don't think Mills, but I think Coventry are looking very strongly at him. So I think Dan Neil will depart. I think Sirkin, the left back, might depart as well. But they did an awful lot in the summer, Sunderland. So wouldn't surprise me. A striker, another striker, maybe a midfielder. But I think they'll do a little bit, not a huge amount, but I think they'll do a bit. But their targets for the summer are going to be hugely impressive, and to the rest of us northeasterners, a bit concerning.
Ooh, very interesting. Very interesting. Well, let's move away from transfers. There's a big development that's been happening. Eddie Howe said at the press conference, we need to get onto the straight and narrow about the stadium and the training ground project. It's got to be announced that everyone. I mean, not that long ago, we all thought it was going to be announced, and then suddenly it was put on the back burner. We said, we'll do it here, then they're going to do it there, then it keeps on getting put back. Have you heard anything on what is going on with the stadium and training ground?
I think Newcastle have got very good people in place. Look at the Jamie Rubin and his brother who were in place on the board. There's nobody better at property and stuff like that in Britain than Jamie Rubin and his brother. So I don't think Newcastle fans have to worry too much about what's coming. I think whatever the best answer is, the stadium. My personal belief is I think you should just rework the Gallagher and stay at St James's. I think you'll rue the day you leave St James's. I really do. I think it's I wouldn't do it personally. As a Middlesbrough, I'd probably like it. As a Middlesbrough fan, I'd quite like it to leave St James's. To be honest, and I think a lot of fans outside will encourage you to leave St James's. Yeah. It's a horrible place to go as an away fan, as an away team. I think you'll be. Yeah, it's modern day sport though, isn't it? So we know why you would do that. The training ground's going to come. Of course it will. I wouldn't worry too much about that. But it's one of those where obviously Eddie gets. I think Eddie was just responding because he probably gets asked this question once
all the time,
once a month at his presses, and there's going to be more coming from Eddie. You know, it's a big year coming for Eddie. You know, let's keep an eye on this England job again, guys. The likelihood is this England job's going to be available again in the summer. And
so that was leading on to my next question, because the way that he said, I won't be here when this actually happens, you know, the stadium, like spades hit the ground. As someone said last night on our show, and it could be quite right, Tuchel to Newcastle, Eddie Howe to England after the World Cup. Do you think that could happen?
No, not in the month of Sundays. No. Why? Unless you win the league. Why would Thomas Tuchel is a serial? He goes into jobs where it's all set up. Why would Thomas Tuchel want to go to Newcastle? To be honest, but
I mean, it's more for us wanting someone who can take us to the next level. If Eddie Howe isn't the man, could you see that potentially happening?
No, not at all. Not in the slightest, personally. But Eddie Howe, you know, if England do come calling, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I think he should have got the England gig before Tuchel, to be honest. I think I'll be surprised if he's not in the reckoning again, and that's nothing to do with Newcastle, just because I think the best English coach should be there. Although arguably, you know, it's going to be fascinating whatever happens. You know, it's let's see what happens with Eddie. You know, Eddie's done such a good spell there. Obviously, I imagine is he? I bet there's a slight frustration with Eddie at times that Newcastle haven't quite pushed on to where he wants them to be. I think the team have progressed clearly under him. As a club, they've come light years on the pitch under Eddie Howe. I think it's easy to forget. You fans won't forget, but it's easy to forget where you were before he took over.
Right. We certainly do
a wonderful job. But again, there is that argument, of course, there is that with Piff, where if you do like we were talking with Joe Linton and Miguel Almiron, when you move on from players like this, it does the same happen with the manager as well. Will you ever win the Premier League with Eddie Howe as manager?
That's a good question.
That is the thing, but do you then look at a Tuchel or whoever it may be? It's a fascinating debate, and one that may come around sooner rather than later, sooner than we think.
Yeah.
I think largely many of the so-called elite managers, aren't looking for a project that they to build. They're looking for what do they call it? Move-in ready. I mean, they're looking for something that they can come in and all the bones are there, all the services are in place, all the structures are there, all the academies are there. You've got a running conveyor belt of talent coming in through your academies. That's not where Eddie Howe is. Eddie Howe loves the day-to-day involvement of running a football club. He loves the development aspect of it. The question is whether or not we've got the future ahead of us that satisfies his wants. I think, this constant talk of revenue and all the discussions of whether or not there's PSR, every single training, every single transfer window, Eddie Howe has been the one who has to sit there and take questions on PSR questions. And I wonder if there's an element of, eventually Eddie just kind of goes, you know what, I'm kind of done with this.
but every manager does. Unai Emery takes PSR questions, and Villa are arguably one of the best run clubs off the field in the Premier League. So, a lot has been taken off Eddie Howe's shoulders with Hopkinson and Wilson there now. I think it's where he wants to be. And a lot of these top like Arsenal, Arteta took over a project. Maresca took over a project at Chelsea. Very different scenarios, but when you talk about elite managers, I don't think Newcastle would go down that route. You need to look at who is next. You know, is it the Areolas, Liam Resenya's even? You know, who is the next elite manager? It's like the players, isn't it? It's, you know, when Arsenal took a huge chance on Mikel Arteta, Chelsea took a huge chance on Enzo Maresca. These weren't elite appointments when they were made. Far from it.
I don't think Maresca's the answer, Chelsea, personally.
I think he's doing a fantastic in that circumstance. I think he's steering that ship brilliantly well. Remember, that's one of the hardest jobs in football, and I think he's doing a superb job. I really do think Maresca's doing a superb job at that now. What he's had to cope with that, I know people saying it's easy, but then the bomb squads and, you know, he doesn't have a player over the age of 23 or something in his first team. That's it's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's a very good point that people forget about as well, don't they? They just see the money and see how much was spent on the squad and think, put it together. It's just a jigsaw, isn't it? When it's really not. There's a lot. The human beings, after all, we've got to, you know, he's got to make sure he's a bit like an Eddie Howe manager, like a one-to-one sort of coach. He's got to be everything to them, doesn't he? As a father figure in a way as well, because they're so young. So yeah, I agree with that. To be fair. Just you see the big £1 billion spent, and you think, Jesus, I wish we had that kind of money we could spend.
Yeah, but I say it's all about recruitment. It's all about good recruitment. It's not just the best. As we know, it's not just the club who spends the most money in the world that wins everything. We know that.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the joy of football, isn't it?
It is, absolutely is. Dan, have you got one last question, or have we covered everything, do you think?
No, I think we've covered everything.
I think we have. And the last shout out for this, can't wait to meet Graeme in person. Can't wait to meet Ivo and Supermark and do an amazing night together at Newcastle Benfield Football Club. Remember, £15 per person. Just scan this QR code and you can get yourself some tickets and come and have a good night. Cheap drinks. Come and chat to us. We won't bite, I promise. And I'm just looking forward to raising some money for two great charities, Azure and the Butterwick Hospice. They will be receiving every single penny from ticket sales, from raffle sales, from everything we do. So we're really looking forward to doing that. And again, Graeme, thank you for agreeing to come down and take your part in it. And they are a great charity. Do you want to give a little shout out on what they do? Yeah,
Butterwick Hospice, local Teesside hospice, one of the biggest in the area. Obviously, it's hospital care. People come out of hospital, and towards death coverage that they do. I took care of my mum personally, but they do such a wonderful. Like all hospices, they don't really get much from any government in the country. Hospices are, I think, 70% self-funded. So from the Butterwick to every single one in the region, please support them. Do a wonderful, fantastic job for the whole country.
Absolutely spot on. And hopefully we can do our bit and get them some good funding. And a great night as well, all round it will be. Thank you for coming on and good luck tonight. I know you're playing at home tonight. Hull, isn't it?
Yorkshire Derby, home to Hull City.
Yorkshire Derby, yeah. Tough game, that. Bookies have got your odds on favourites, but it's a very close game tonight, I think.
We spanked them in Humberside a few weeks ago, but yeah, it's a tough division. Big game, Coventry Ipswich as well, which we'll have half an eye on as well, because that's a huge game, which could have ramifications for Coventry and Middlesbrough in the top two, because we're not trying to not look over our shoulders towards Ipswich, but they are a bit of a juggernaut with their squad. Yeah, they've started poorly, but seem to have sorted themselves out, haven't they? So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think Coventry Ipswich kick off at 7:30, so I'll be keeping an eye on that. Good luck for the game tonight, and we'll speak to you again very, very soon, Graeme. Thanks to the chat for keeping us going, and some great knowledge there that we've gone through tonight. So we'll see you again very soon. Take care. No problem. Speaking January, guys. Take care. Thanks, everybody. See you, guys. See you.